Well, Nigeria now has a new budget. Yes, let's look at it now. The Senate and the House of Representatives last week passed the revised 2020 budget of 10.805 trillion naira. The budget was passed at the plenary after the Red Chamber received and considered the report of its Appropriations Committee. Now, a slump of 500 billion naira was added to the budget as an intervention fund for COVID-19. And which 186 billion naira was earmarked for the health sector. In the revised budget, now 4.9 trillion naira put aside for recurrent expenditure. We have 2.4 trillion naira for capital expenditure. We now have 422 billion naira, which is fixed for statutory transfers. Now, while the worrisome one, 2.9 trillion naira is earmarked for debt servicing. Let's move on. Now, key assumptions in the revised 2020 budget includes a proposed benchmark of oil put at $28 per barrel. Now, 1.9 barrels of oil production per day target, reduced to 1.8 million barrels per day. That's excluding agreement with OPEC, which we are doing about 1.4 at the moment. But let's leave that aside for the discussion. For exchange rates, it stands at 360 naira to $1. Now, according to the revised document, the Ministry of Works and Housing got the highest cut of 58.83 billion naira. Its capital expenditure was slashed from 315.57 billion naira to 256.74 billion naira. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development came second, with a reduction in capital expenditure from 124.4 billion naira to 79 billion naira. That's for the Ministry of Agriculture. In the revised budget proposal, budgetary allocation to the National Assembly complex renovation was reduced by 25% from 37 billion naira to 27.7 billion naira for the renovation. Provisions for education and health, respectively, were cut. For education, cut by 54%, while for health, cut by 42%. Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, got 44 billion naira, a reduction from 80 billion naira. Where Northeast Development Commission was allocated 20 billion naira as against 38 billion naira earlier approved. The decline in global oil prices caused by the coronavirus pandemic made it necessary for major economies to revisit their earlier expenditure plans. Let's break this down now. I have joining me via Skype from Abuja, the former Director General of the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He's Dr. Chijoke Ekechukwu. And from here in Lagos, I have also joining me via Skype, the immediate past president of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Is a professor of economics, Professor Segun Ajibola. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Let me start from Abuja. Dr. Chijoke, I'm going to start from Abuja. Now, let's start with a breakdown of the revised 2020 budget of 10.805 trillion naira. This is another revision. Some countries have revised their budgets as well as once again. Now, for now, 422 billion naira is fixed for statutory transfers. What do you make of all of these figures in its entirety?
You could see that when the budget was reviewed and when it was sent to National Assembly, on their own, they had to start adding certain figures on the statutory transfers to the Niger Delta, the Northeast Development area, and then, of course, the NJC and National Assembly. These are all the areas of statutory transfers. And having done this, you see that they actually want some development to take place in the Niger Delta area. in spite of all the controversies we've had and all the audits they are doing here and there in all these development places. Now, when these monies are not pushed into the Niger Delta area or the Northeast development area, you will see that maybe the expected developments in these areas will not be seen. Last year, I don't think a lot happened in Niger Delta development area, and then probably the essence of pushing a little more money into those areas just to ensure that activities. And of course, when there are activities in those areas, there is going to be ripple effects in the economy. A lot of contractors are going to be getting certain busy. They're going to be getting busy, and also a lot of things are going to start happening with such a situation. So I think with this, that's obviously why such amount of money was pushed in statutory transfers.
All right. Professor Ajibola, you're taking my next question. 4.9 trillion naira for recurrent expenditure. 2.4 trillion naira is for capital expenditure. Now, what do you make of this spending plan? I'm also worried about the amount that is earmarked for debt servicing. Prof.
Yeah, you know, we're in a very year that is so peculiar, so challenging, so worrisome. Even the budget itself, I believe Nigeria is struggling to make the best out of this very bad situation that has been occasioned by COVID-19. First of all is the almost 5 trillion recurrent expenditure. You know that in our environment here, one of the issues that we keep struggling with is first, high cost of governance. If you look at what salaries, allowances, and other expenditure on personnel and travels and so on, we take out of that 4.9 trillion. It's a humongous. Then when you look at other expenses here and there, it is always a worrisome aspect of our budgeting process to have to provide for this high figure for overhead expenses, which come by way of a recurrent expenditure. Then if you look at the provision for debt service, almost 3 trillion. If you look at the budget breakdown itself, almost half, over 5 trillion, is to be financed through borrowing, local and foreign. Out of about that 3 trillion debt service, about 1.8 trillion is to service local debt. So which is showing the stress on government revenue. And of course, with the challenges that we see coming from the global oil market, this will not be surprising to anybody that the budget for this year has to rely heavily on borrowing, both local and foreign. And don't forget, $5.5 billion has just been approved as external borrowing for the government for this year. So this year budget is leans very, very heavily on borrowing. So it shouldn't be surprising that the debt service burden is equally heavy. Then when we look at the provision of 2.4 trillion for capital expenditure, if we look at it very, very critically, how much of capital projects can Nigeria undertake in 2020 that is fast running out? Half of the year is already gone. COVID-19 is still with us. So if we look at even the capital projects that are already on ground, let's look at the various road projects. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is already shut down. Lagos-Ibadan Rail project is the same. If we look at the power project that you just mentioned, even those ones that are coming as addition in year 2020, how many of them can mobilize to site yet? So in terms of capital projects, it's a major challenge for the country in year 2020. Somebody even advised that why do we bother ourselves with capital projects and capital expenditure in 2020? Why can't we concentrate on survival first? Let's survive the devastation that we have saying coming from COVID-19. Let's see how we can strategize to survive that in 2020. And we plan better for capital projects in 2021. Well, I will not succumb to that fully. But I do know that capital projects, which, will be the babies of a capital expenditure aspect of the budget. Most of the capital projects may not take off until perhaps late in the year, maybe last quarter of the year.
Indeed.
So with 2.4, and of course, when we are talking about 2.4, what's the difference between even the 2.4 trillion naira and the initial budget figure for capital expenditure, 2.4, 2.7, almost the same. So we continue to have this kind of conflicts and contradictions in how do we package our budget. Within the three main budget heads, the recurrent expenditure, the debt service, and the capital expenditure.
All right, Prof, I'll come back to you. Let me ask Dr. Ikechukwu this. Dr. Ikechukwu, let's look at the key fundamentals now. Let's look at particularly crude oil price, which remains a mainstay of our economy. From 57, we went to 25, finally 28, and as of today, is looking a little bit fair, about 32% on the other side. But analysts are still saying that there is still trouble when it comes to this spending plan. How does this come to you, Dr. Ikechukwu?
Yes. The good news is the fact that the Nigerian budget is only less than 10% of our GDP. What it tells us also is that this country is being run by the private sector and is being run by non-oil sector. Much as, of course, the non-oil sector constitutes about 90% of the GDP, while the oil sector is just about 8%. And so when this happens, you see that, yes, we're over-relying on the price of oil. We're over-relying on revenue oil because revenue from oil constitutes 90% of our revenue base. And so if it is what is constituting that, what it means is that we need to ensure that the non-oil sector starts generating revenue for government. Because whereas the non-oil sector is about 80% or 70% of our GDP, you see that, well, about 90% of our GDP, yet the revenue coming from that area to government is not as high as that. That is why we still rely on this oil pricing. Of course, many times we have spoken about the issues of diversification. That diversification is taking place, but the speed and the growth level of the various sectors is not as high as we expect it to go in order to make any major difference in the economy. That is why at any particular time there is any volatility in the price of oil, we will all start shaking and everybody will start shaking. A major solution to this is for the various states of our country to just pretend as if they are self-sufficient and do as if there won't be any allocation coming from federal government. When various states continue to develop their various infrastructure, various the areas of competitive advantage, you will see that there will be very less reliance on the price of oil and very little pressure on federal government coming from the federal government. So we need to ensure that the states are actually taking advantage of all the resources that they have and start using them. Agricultural production is everywhere in all the state capitals, in all the states, and they should use whatever advantage they have in all the crops. If we have solid minerals states, they should ensure that they just get what they have and even start contributing, so that when they get the allocation from federal government, it's not going to be like the main source of the revenue. It's going to be like part of the sources they are going to have. So when we have states actually being independent in terms of self-sufficiency, then we're going to start having less pressure on the budget that we have today.
Indeed, that sounds very good. Prof, the sum of 500 billion naira was added to the budget as intervention fund for COVID-19, of which 186 billion naira was already earmarked for the health sector. Now, with all of these challenges you've talked about, what we're facing with COVID-19, what do you make of these figures? What are we expecting to get out of it?
Yeah, unfortunately, COVID-19 has been a very, very expensive pandemic for Nigeria. Expensive in everything. Expensive in terms of a lockdown. It has locked down business, has locked down the economy. So we are losing so fast in terms of the quantum of economic activities we can undertake. It's very, very expensive in that even individuals that could run up and down to earn means of livelihood, they have been out of business. They couldn't earn their means of livelihood for quite some time. Now it's expensive in terms of what it will take or what it has been taken to now deal with with COVID-19 itself. And don't forget, we've had to spend so much in building isolation centers, quarantine, procuring equipment, PPE, and other things. So when we talk of 500 billion, just imagine how much the government has expended to date, and what has even come from the public, from the private sector in terms of donations to fight this pandemic. So it's expensive. We only pray that COVID-19 will see the end of COVID-19 in no distant time. So expensive to test, expensive to isolate, expensive to procure drug and other equipment. So with the 500 billion, we hope we'll be able to be in a very good state to fight it. You realize that in recent times, the figure has been rising astronomically, and we just hope that we'll be able to simmer down those figures by following the various guidelines. But it's an expensive pandemic. Indeed, very, very expensive.
Very expensive. So, I'll come back to you now, Prof, in a minute. Dr. Chijioke, I'd like you to tell us the business environment. You play an active role, and you've seen what's been happening before the lockdown, outside the lockdown. In about 60 seconds, can you tell us what the business people are feeling at this time? We've seen figures coming out from the World Bank, from the Economic Summit Group. Now, you're feeling this thing. You talk to these people day to day. Tell us what's playing out in the entire business world.
Obviously, an average business person in the private sector is experiencing the worst business cycle of their lives. Government, we expect that government, in their own wisdom, said certain stimulus packages will be sent to MSMEs, but I can tell you from the feelers we're getting, people and the MSMEs that applied for loans of about 25 million are getting 2.5 million. So if the proposal I have is about 25 million and I want to use it to expand my business or even to grow my business a little more, and you give me 2.5 million, what that means is that we are actually preparing for a showdown. We're preparing that these people are not going to pay this money back because it's not going to solve their problems. So that is like preparing for default from the beginning. Having said that, the amount of money mentioned that should go around MSMEs is not even going to go up to 10% of the need of the system. So we need to think about further interventions that will come in the form of stimulus package to MSMEs and maybe other sectors, manufacturing sector, agricultural sector. Otherwise, the business world is facing a lot of hardship right now. And of course, what the effect to that is that so many people, so many staff of those institutions have been asked to go because they cannot sustain the cost of paying these people. There is no business.
Indeed, Dr. Chijioke, indeed, time is running out. I want to take Prof on the banking sector in 60 seconds. Prof, let's round off on that note. Tell us what the banking sector would face, what we should expect post-COVID-19 in 60 seconds. I know we can't finish this discussion today.
Yeah, we just pray that there will be new reasons for loan defaults in the environment, because if businesses have been shut down for 3 months and debt obligations keep piling up, debt service obligations are not suspended, and they cannot be suspended because the banks themselves, they also have their own debt service obligations to their depositors. So it's a question of equilibrium. So if that is the case, then we pray that business will return quickly. And like Dr. Oshigioke said, it's been a very tough time for everybody. So if business returns and they're able to generate business, then we won't see new waves of loan defaults. Otherwise, that becomes inevitable with what we are seeing. If that happens, it has its multiplier effects on the economy as a whole. So, and that is why the fear is outside there, very palpable fear of this economic recession, which we are praying, if the recession comes, not even go into economic depression.
All right, Dr. Chijioke Ikechukwu, the former DG of Abuja Chamber of Commerce, and Professor Segun Ajibola, immediate past president of the Chinese Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Thank you, gentlemen. I know we have to continue this discussion. It's really very interesting. Thank you for your time on the show today.